we moved to Charleston, West Virginia. We acquired a failing plant in 1955. My father and I. He was the wind at my back, you know. And so he helped me so much, and we bought that plant in Charleston, West Virginia, and Carol and I moved there in 1955. And we lived in Charleston for 11 years. And it was a nice place for me to grow up in business. I had some good mentors there and good people that I learned a lot from, and served me well the rest of my life.
What brought you to Jacksonville? How did you get here, Jack? Why Jacksonville?
Well, in 1963, our family, we'd purchased the Pepsi-Cola bottling plant in Lynchburg, Virginia, in a wonderful transaction, nice transaction. And in 1965, Pepsi-Cola in Jacksonville wasn't doing very well, and the Pepsi-Cola company was worried about it. You know, it was all right, but it wasn't great. And so the president of the Pepsi-Cola company knew that my father and I were acquiring plants, and he called one day and said, why don't you go to Jacksonville and look that market over and see if you wouldn't like to buy it? So I came down here and spent 4 or 5 days and looked Jacksonville over. I liked the town then. It was only, the population of Jacksonville wasn't a whole lot in 1965. I think the population was 400,000. You know, the area was 600,000, half what it is today. And so the owners were living in New York. They didn't even live here. They lived in New York. So I went up to New York and tried to talk to them about Pepsi-Cola Jacksonville and Gainesville. And they were, you know, it was out of my league. I couldn't afford it. It was more than we could afford. And I called the president of the Pepsi-Cola company and told him it was more than we could afford. He wanted to know how much was between us, and I told him. And so it rested. Nothing happened until December 1st, 1965. I was in my office, and the guy, Pepsi man, called from New York and said, would you be interested in buying Jacksonville Pepsi-Cola plant? I said, sure, but you know, there's too much money. I can't afford it. He says, I've talked them down a bit, talked them down, and maybe they're a little more realistic. And if you'll go up and see them, and if you negotiate your best deal and there's anything between you and them, don't give up. There's ways I can help you. And I thought, well, that's a nice invitation. So I clarified the issue and I called my lawyer at night. He says, you'll have to be up here the next day. So I took my lawyer up the next day, and we negotiated a transaction with those people, and that was in early December 1965, and then January 3rd, 1966, we bought the business. And that was a lot to accomplish in less than 30 days and over Christmas, New Year holiday. So, you know, some things are just sort of meant to be. But you have to step out. You have to have the courage. And, you know, the guys at Pepsi-Cola Company knew that we would do it right, and they knew that we would. We did the deal with Everett out of an agreement. You know, we did it on the telephone. You don't have to have 50-page agreements for everything that happens. So it worked out well. A few years later, a company called General Cinema came along, and they were not diversified, and they're the largest theater company in the country. And they wanted to diversify into soft drink bottling, particularly Pepsi-Cola. And they had purchased Miami before us. They bought Miami, and they bought Youngstown in Akron, Ohio. And they wanted to buy us, and so we did that. Well, they came to see us and talked to us, and so we finally decided that it was a good time to sell the business. We had 8 plants at that time, counting our canning facilities. And see, in the business, I had my father, who was the principal, and I had an uncle who was involved, and I had another uncle who was involved, and I had my wonderful sister and brother and myself. You know, there's a lot of us involved, and as we said, in courage, there's risk. So we sold the company in order that everyone could live out their lives in the manner in which they'd become accustomed without a heck of a lot of risk. And see the older parts of the family and my sister and brother come out good made me feel good. It was it was a family deal. It was good for the family, and that's what it was all about.